We've assembled a district, really. The McCabe being the anchor. There's been a lot of work done on McCabe, and having a historical resource of over 800,000 ounces of gold at 11.7 grams per ton, which I'll point out was that was the grade they used after 85% processing recoveries and 15% dilution. So the head grade is estimated to be higher than actually 11.7 grams, and a silver credit that's pretty meaningful. So it's an excellent starting point for us and the team. Having a high grade deposit like this off a paved highway with a power line running through it, we have water, we have access to labor. It's a really good place to be. I've worked in remote areas in Canada, for example, in Nunavut and Eskay Creek, and you know, accessing those, just exploration. It was extremely expensive. We're flying in helicopters every day. We're flying in diesel. Everything's being flown in. Our project, you can take a rental car from the airport and basically be at a historical shaft in under 2 hours. We think we're in a really good position to, create value and long-term value that, again, in this environment, and the favorable stance the current jurisdiction has towards mining and getting critical minerals is a good place to be.
For disclosure purposes, our site does not make recommendations for purchases or sale of stocks, services, or products. Nothing on our site or this podcast should be construed as an offer or solicitation to buy or sell products or securities. All investing involves risk and possible losses. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. For disclosure purposes, Arizona Eagle Mining is a paid-for client on the Investor Ideas website. Kevin, it's great to have you on the show. Arizona Eagle is a new, exciting story for listeners. I'd love for you to give the background of how you founded and started Arizona Eagle and a little bit about the project.
Let me start by saying who I am. My background really started out in geology. I was a geologist. I graduated from Queens in geological science in 1995, and then I went to work in the field for a number of years. I worked in Flin Flon, Manitoba, Nunavut, Eskay Creek, Sudbury, really throughout Canada, looking for base metals, gold, nickel, and PGMs. That's my background from a technical perspective. And then in the late 1990s, we went into a bit of a cyclical downturn in the commodity space. So I went back and did an MBA in finance at the Schiller School of Business. And from there, I went to CIBC World Markets, working in the equity research mining department, covering gold and base metals companies. And then from there, I really spent the vast majority of my career, the bulk of my career, doing investment banking work, financing mining companies and doing merger and acquisitions in the mining space. And from GMP Securities, I then went, which is now Stifel, I went to Maxit Capital and focused on mining M&A. So that's my background, geological sciences background, and MBA in finance, working in mining investment banking. So that's me. And most recently, about 2 years ago, actually, I started looking at this project in Arizona. We looked at a number of projects, and what really stood out with the project we acquired, the McCabe Mine, were a bunch of things. What we look for, obviously, when we're looking at a mining project is, number one, is it in a favorable mining jurisdiction? Does it have access to power, to water, to a labor force? And is the mining law something you can work with? And of course, Arizona checks all those boxes. The McCabe Mine, which was our target, we started looking at it a couple of years ago, as I mentioned, and we were able to solidify a deal back in April of 2025. And we actually acquired some additional private land at the same time. So for us, the McCabe Mine, being a past producer as recently as the early 1990s, but really was reinvigorated in the late 80s by a company called Stanwest Mining, which was a public company in the United States. They sunk a shaft, they got the mining permits, and they started a 500 ton per day mill when gold prices were still fairly robust in the early 1980s. So for us, this deposit checked a lot of boxes. It was high grade in nature. The historical resource is 11.7 grams per ton gold, with silver at 69 grams per ton silver. It was a producer, long history of mining, and infrastructure's only got better. It's north off Highway I-17. You drive past the historical another mine, the Iron King mine, which was largely a zinc gold mine, produced almost 1 billion pounds of zinc and 1 million ounces, nearly 1 million ounces of gold. So it checked a lot of our boxes. So that was what attracted to us in the first place. So that's the project, the overview of the project, and how we came about it.
Do you want to talk a little bit about Arizona for investors that are maybe not as familiar? And then you mentioned private land and some of the benefits, assuming with private land, the permitting, water access, et cetera, are all easier.
Arizona is a mining friendly area, of course. With anything to do with mining, there is certainly permitting processes and studies that you have to do. It's important for me to point out here that we are not in the National Forest Service, although we have staked over 4,000 acres of BLM ground for exploration purposes. In the district, we've basically consolidated. We have over 300 acres of private ground, and being on private ground, we don't have any ties to any Aboriginal rights. We are not a part of the Forest Service. So we are a past producing mine. So we have a footprint that was actually in the 80s, as I mentioned. Stan West built a mine and a mill and a processing facility on approximately 10 acres. We've assembled over 300 acres of private ground. So for surface disturbance, we don't have to go through the NEPA process, for example, on our private ground. We will, of course, need federal review to get certain permits, but it's a much simpler process being on private ground. So that's a big positive for us. Arizona is a mining friendly jurisdiction. To the north of us, we have the United Verde mine, for example, that produced nearly 2 billion pounds of copper until the 1950s, the early 1950s. So it's really well known for its copper and gold deposit. And we're in Yavapai County. We've assembled a district, really. The McCabe being the anchor. There's been a lot of work done on McCabe, and having a historical resource of over 800,000 ounces of gold at 11.7 grams per ton, which I'll point out that was the grade they used after 85% processing recoveries and 15% dilution. So the head grade is estimated to be higher than actually 11.7 grams, and a silver credit that's pretty meaningful. So it's an excellent starting point for us and the team.
Can you talk to us about the McCabe mine more in detail for the geo-inclined following that wants to really understand the rocks and the system that you're looking at?
The McCabe Mine is in younger rocks, laramide age. It's a mesothermal structurally hosted system that strikes northeast southwest. And we also have some north-south structures that tend to intersect these northeast southwest structures. Geologically, we are in a VMS district. There's many Proterozoic in age VMS deposits, which we have actually, which we believe the Iron King to be, that we drive by again, so 3 to 5 miles from our project. That is a VMS deposit that was largely, as I mentioned, zinc and gold. We have at least 2 targets on our project that have VMS style mineralization. We have, for example, we have 28% copper in an outcrop with coincident with high grade gold and actually silver that has some very nice geophysical anomalies that we would follow up. That's separate from the structurally hosted, much younger in age, mesothermal gold style mineralization you see at McCabe. So McCabe, the historical resource is over about 800 meters of strike length and down to a depth of 300 meters. So we're encouraged by the fact that we know that there's small past producing mines on strike and in either direction of the McCabe structure that extend beyond 2 kilometers. We also know that the Iron King mine was mined to a depth of 1 kilometer. Our resource is only down to the 800,000 ounces I spoke about, is only down to 300 meters. So this structurally hosted mesothermal precious metal deposit, being the McCabe Mine, is open in every direction. So we're encouraged by that. We're also encouraged by the fact that we see multiple parallel and perpendicular structures to McCabe that also have the potential and actually have known because we've sampled them, and some of them have a history of past production in the area. So there's for us, it's we've got a really good starting point because we have a historical resource. It was mined. They sunk the shaft initially down to 850 feet. They then extended the shaft, this being Stan West, down to 1,450 feet. There's kilometers of underground working, so we know we've got a very good foundation to number one, validate that resource. And number two, to extend the resource along strike, at depth, and in additional parallel and perpendicular structures. There's a lot to do. And as I said, we've assembled so much ground, we essentially have a district scale opportunity to pursue.
Assuming the prices when they used to have the project back were not the same as now, we're at 11.7 grams per ton. And, the other day, I think we were 5,500 gold. Today, we're just under. Do you want to talk about the potential of this project as a resurgent with the consolidation of the land package that you have and those fantastic grades?
It's very interesting times, as you rightly point out. Gold prices, as we're speaking today, are very close to $5,000 per ounce. They just popped through, went actually almost as high as 5,600 per ounce. Silver prices are surging. They corrected on Friday as we speak today, but they were, well through $100 an ounce, which are of course record highs. Number one, I'm a geologist, but we really believe in the precious metal space, as of course the monetary system is under pressure for many, many years as a result of monetary policy, not just in the US, but globally. When we look at when this was in production last, which was in call it the early to mid 80s, gold prices as you know, had come off the gold standard, and they surged to over $800 an ounce. But at the time when this was in production, when they started, it was in the 400s, but was steadily declining, and it went into, of course, the 300s and then 200s per ounce. A feasibility study was done on this project, where at the time in the mid 80s, call it, cash costs were estimated to be $200 an ounce. Now, when you adjust for inflation and all those things, cash costs would not have increased anywhere near as much as the gold price has gone up. The gold price has gone up nearly 15 times, in fact, over 15 times from the gold price when this was in production last. We're fortunate. We're catching a bit of a tailwind here in the gold price and the silver price. We're in this business for the long term. So although it's really nice to see, gold prices double since we bought this project, and silver prices, almost triple, depending on the day because it's so volatile. But we're constructive long term, and having a high grade deposit like this off a paved highway with a power line running through it, we have water, we have access to labor. It's a really good place to be. I've worked in remote areas in Canada, for example, in Nunavut and Eskay Creek, and accessing those, just exploration. It was extremely expensive. We're flying in helicopters every day. We're flying in diesel. Everything's being flown in. You're accessing projects by helicopter at thousands of dollars, and now it's thousands of dollars per hour. It's extremely expensive work. Our project, you can take a rental car from the airport and basically be at a historical shaft in under 2 hours. Yeah, our infrastructure, it's second to none. So we think we're in a really good position to, create value and long-term value that, again, in this environment, and the favorable stance the current jurisdiction has towards mining and getting critical minerals is a good place to be.
I'd love for you to walk us through what your plans are for 2026. You have your inaugural drill program started. Do you want to talk to us about how many meters and what the plan is going forward?
We've started drilling, actually, Cali. We started last week, and so things are going very well at site. We have our first drill going. As our 43-101 states, we have a 4,500-meter inaugural drill program planned to test primarily the McCabe structure. And on the back of that, we are pursuing a reverse takeover of a company called Core Nickel. The shareholder vote for the core shareholders is scheduled for March 13th. And should that have a favorable outcome, We expect to be trading on the TSXV under the symbol AZEM shortly thereafter. And as you know, because you're close to the space, since our last raise, which was in the fall, and even before that, the valuations have quintupled, and in some cases more. And we haven't, because we've been private, there hasn't been any new share issuances. We currently have about 50 million shares outstanding, of which directors and management own nearly 50% of those shares. And we've invested personally close to $6 million across the capital structure. So we've got some extremely strong shareholders that have been very supportive since we did the initial acquisition raise back in the springtime. Been very supportive. Some shareholders have bought on every round, like management and directors have, in funding the company. So we're in good financial shape. We have over $5 million, again, sufficient to start our program and get results starting to turn. And we'll see what the future brings. We're optimistic that there will be additional funding down the road, should we need it to expand the drill program. And in this current environment, it would appear that the market will want us to drill this more.
With the 5 million in the bank, does that carry you forward into a second drill program, or would you need to raise capital going into the second one?
If we're going to continue to drill, which is our anticipation, we would, depending on results, of course, and depending on markets and all those factors. Our plan would be to continue to drill. As I mentioned, we have the McCabe structure is over 2 kilometers in strike. It goes as deep as 400 meters. If it goes to deeper, that would require, of course, additional drilling. So this project could, it just has so much exploration upside, so much potential that there's a lot of drilling we could do here.
I'd love for you to go over the management team because it's always important to have management that understands the jurisdiction, and you have some people on your board that are quite familiar with Arizona, which is again a fantastic add-on for Arizona Eagle.
Yeah, without going into a lot of detail or name by name, which you can find at our website, arizonaeaglemining.com, we've assembled a phenomenal team, both at the board and the management level. Our geologists are superb guys we've worked with before. The drilling teams we've worked with before on past projects, so we know what they can do. They deliver. And yeah, so technically we have a really strong team. We've got some outside consultants that have 40 plus years experience in the mining industry and in Arizona that know how to build mines. And so we've even initially contacted them and are working with them just to get ideas about how things have changed and how this could potentially be mined, although that's not our intent. Intent in the near term is to drill. We have, on the board level, we have mining engineers, geologists, lawyers, and really a broad array of both technical and capital markets experience. So we're very fortunate that we think we've assembled a team that, for an early stage company that we have a past producing mine, but we're really in the exploration phase of the company's evolution. We're a new company, but we've got some really strong people on the board, on the team, on the ground, and also, I will point out, on the capital structure. We have some phenomenal, I'm not going to name drop, but we have some phenomenal gold investors on our cap table. And we also have some very strong technical people, CEOs of mining companies that we've had the privilege of knowing for decades, are well known in the mining space. So we've got a bit of a stamp of approval there, which of course we really appreciate, and we appreciate their support.
Kevin, it sounds like the perfect story and the perfect time in the commodities super cycle. As we come to the close, how can investors or following reach out to you? And then any closing statements that you want to leave them with?
How to find us? Well, first, I would start at our website. We have a website, arizonaeaglemining.com. And we can also be found on LinkedIn and also on X. So follow us on those platforms for updates, press releases. As I mentioned, Core Nickel shareholders will have the opportunity to vote on this transaction on March 13th. And of course, we're hoping for their support. We think we have an extremely exciting high-grade gold and silver opportunity here, with a history of production, in a phenomenal jurisdiction and with incredible access to infrastructure. So yeah, we look forward to everyone's support. And of course, I can be reached on my email at kreid@arizonaeaglemining.com.